Welcome to the past paper 3 run through. As ever, the 6-mark questions I'll not be going through in this video. You can get the answer to those from your teacher at the end of this. And remember that you always have these equations at the front of the paper. If you've got numbers in a question in the physics part in particular, then make sure you refer to this page just in case the answer is staring in the face. So, the biology section first, it says look at the diagram of the human heart, and you've got to write a letter A to E next to the correct name for each part of the heart. So the aorta is this big artery here, that's D. The left atrium is E here, that's the left atrium. Because remember, you are looking at this diagram front on, so even though that looks like it's the right side to you, it's actually the left side if it was in your body, if you like. So the right ventricle, therefore, is C, this part here. The tricuspid valve is B, there. And therefore the vena cava is A. So if you get 3 or 4 of those correct, that's 1 mark. If you get less than 3 correct, that's 0. But if you get obviously all 5, then that's 2 marks. Blood contains cells. One type of cell is a red blood cell. Red blood cells are adapted to their job by being very small. Explain why this helps them do their job. Because you can first say they're small, therefore they can squeeze through the capillaries. Or you can say that it has a large surface area to volume ratio. You must make sure you say both those parts. So large surface area to volume ratio. Hemoglobin is found in red blood cells. Hemoglobin is a protein made in the cytoplasm. Red blood cells start off life with a nucleus. The gene for hemoglobin is only found in the nucleus. Explain how it's possible that hemoglobin can be made in the cytoplasm. And you can have any 2 from these 3 points. You can say that the DNA codes for the mRNA. You can say that the mRNA moves to the cytoplasm. And then you can say the RNA is passed to the ribosomes in the cytoplasm to make hemoglobin or protein. So any 2 of those 3 points, we get those 2 marks. And then hemoglobin is important in transporting oxygen. Describe how hemoglobin transports oxygen from the lungs to the body cells. So you can say, first you have to mention oxyhemoglobin for 1 mark. And then you can say the breakdown of oxyhemoglobin happens in tissues or cells to release oxygen. Or you can say that oxyhemoglobin dissociates, releasing oxygen, for those 2 marks there. And then this question here, blood also contains white blood cells. White blood cells and red blood cells are made in the bone marrow. Why can cells in the bone marrow produce red and white blood cells? So for the 2 marks there, you can say that the bone marrow contains stem cells or undifferentiated cells, and the stem cells have genes for the 2nd mark, or the stem cells have information to develop into different cells, if you wanted to say that. Next question says, this question is about respiration. Look at the diagram of the respirometer. It can be used to investigate the gases involved in aerobic respiration. It says, complete the balance symbol equation for aerobic respiration. So, glucose, which is what this symbol here is, will react with oxygen, which the symbol is O2. And remember, we breathe out carbon dioxide, so that must be a product of this reaction. And then to balance it, you just need 6 carbon dioxides and 6 waters. This next bit is to do with the 6-mark question on the next page, which I said I would leave. Next question says, this question is about genetic engineering. There is a shortage of human transplant organs. Researchers are growing genetically engineered pig cells containing human genes in the laboratory. Researchers claim that their work could help save thousands of lives a year. And it says, the graph shows the growth curve of the genetically engineered pig cells. Use data in the graph to describe how the number of cells changes. So, to get the 2 marks here, you can say any 2 of these 3 things. So it says, firstly, you can say there's a slow increase at start, then rapid increase, or there's an increase followed by a decline. So that's just describing what the graph shows. And then you've just got to say how it increases or decreases. So the 2nd mark would be for saying something like between 1 to 9 hours there's an increase, but between 5 to 6 hours, there's a rapid increase. So if you talk about the difference in increase along the graph. And the next question says the research team want to genetically engineer pigs so that they produce organs that are not rejected by humans. Describe how they could do this. So 3 marks, any 3 from these points. You could say that they identify or select the gene for human tissue types. You could say that they then isolate this gene. You could then say that they insert or splice this gene into the pig embryo, and then they replicate the genes or cells, and then they check cells for the expression of the gene. So that's 5 different points, so 3 out of those 5. You could also have in there that they identify the anti-rejection gene, and they extract the gene, and then you can say they put this gene into a pig embryo, or the embryo DNA. So 3 out of these 5, I'll just go through them again. Identify or select the gene for human tissue types, first mark. Second, isolate the gene. Third, insert or splice a gene into the pig embryo. Fourth, replicate the gene or cells. And fifth, check cells for expression of gene. Some people are against genetic engineering research. Other people consider it a medical breakthrough. Despite the potential benefits, transplants using these genetically engineered organs have been banned. Do you think the government should allow these organs to be used in transplants? Justify your answer. So, you could say... So first you've got to give either a pro or a con. So anything for these cons, you could say it's creating an artificial situation that would not occur naturally, so it's not natural. You could say that that people will be unsure of the consequences of using other mammals' organs inside of humans. You could say it's unethical, or some people may consider it unethical. You could say you may consider it against religious beliefs. Then arguments for it could be it will mean benefits of reducing donor shortages. It would help to save human life that could be saved but for lack of donors. You could say there's future medical advances could stem from this research. You could say the health cost will be reduced as more people will benefit and less expensive treatment will be needed. And then for the second mark, so you get just 1 mark for saying one of those points. The second mark, you just got to then say that there will be pros and cons for this type of research, or that the government needs to make a decision that is the best outcome for most people. Or you say the benefits outweigh the risks for the majority of the people. So on to the chemistry section. It says Stow-Market Synthetics manufacture ethanoic acid, which has that formula, by 2 different processes. There's 2 processes. It says the relative atomic mass of hydrogen is that, and gives you the relative atomic masses of the 3 elements in the in these things. It says calculate the maximum mass of ethanoic acid that can be made. So in process 2, so I'll just move that so you can see process 2 there. So in process 2, you've got to use the ratios, the relative formula masses. Okay, so you know that methanol weighs 32, and that will react with carbon monoxide, which weighs 28, to make the ethanoic acid, which weighs 60. Okay, so if I had 32 grams of methanol, I could make 60 grams of ethanoic acid. So if I'm using 320 grams of methanol, then I'm going to make 600 grams of ethanoic acid, and that is my answer there. Next question says, Stow-Market Synthetics know the atom economy of a process is important. Water as a waste product in process 1, show the atom economy for making ethanoic acid process 1 is 77%. So remember, the atom economy is the desired product's relative mass over the total relative mass of all the products. The products here are, in process 1, are water and ethanoic acid. So your equation will be, just scroll down, that's the ones I need. Ethanoic acid, which is our desired product, which is 60, there it is, over 60 plus 18. And then remember, it's a percentage, so you times that by 100. So that equals 77%. Then next question, Stone Market Synthetics know that the percentage yield of the process is also important. The factory uses 5.2 tonnes of methanol in process 2. Scientists predict they make 9.8 tonnes of ethanoic acid. They actually make 9.5. So remember, the percentage yield is the actual yield, so 9.5 tonnes here, divided by the predicted yield times 100 to make it a percentage, and that equals 97%. So you've got to draw out the equation that you'd use and then show it makes that number. Look at the table, it gives some information about the atom economy and percentage yield for making ethanoic acid. Process 2 has a high atom economy and a high percentage yield. Explain an advantage other than cost of a very high atom economy. So that is about it being more sustainable, or it makes less or no waste products. And then explain one advantage other than cost of a very high percentage yield, and then that's the answer to that is that there's less waste of reactants. You could also say there's no need to recycle the unreacted reactants if you wanted to. Next question says, nitrogen molecules react with oxygen molecules, nitrogen monoxide molecules are made, the reaction is endothermic. Explain in terms of bond breaking, bond making, why the reaction is endothermic. It's quite a common question, it's worth quite a lot of marks, so it's worth learning how to answer these. So basically, bond breaking, that is an endothermic process, because you have to put energy in to break the bonds, and bond making is exothermic. You get energy out when you make bonds. Now, for a whole process to be endothermic, the amount of energy you have to put in to break the bonds must be more the amount of energy you get out when you make bonds. So for the 3 marks, you have to say bond breaking is endothermic, bond breaking is exothermic, then for the 3rd mark, for this reaction, we had to put more energy in to break the bonds than we got out when we make the bonds. Next question says, boron nitride exists in 2 physical forms. There they are. It says, these 2 forms of boron nitride resemble graphite and diamond, the 2 allotropes of carbon. Boron nitride with structure A is slippery. Explain why in terms of structure and bonding. Now, they can only ask you these questions if they relate them to something you already know, and you know about graphite and diamond, so you're going to answer these questions as if they are. So the reason why graphite, which is what structure A looks like, is slippery, is because there's weak forces between the layers, and those are easy to break, so that means the layers can slide over each other. So for 2 marks there's weak forces between the layers, which are easy to break for the 2nd mark, and that allows them to slide over each other. Boron nitride with structure B has a high melting point. To explain why in terms of structure and bonding. So that one is more like diamond. So you're going to answer it as if it's diamond. So you just say there's a large number of strong bonds for 1st mark, and that needs lots of energy to break for the 2nd mark. Next question, Eva is investigating liquid fuels. She wants to find out which liquid fuel gives out the most energy per gram. There's the apparatus she uses. She heats 100 centimetres cubed of water, 5 liquid fuels. Each time she burns 1 gram of liquid fuel, and she makes a prediction: the more atoms in the molecule of the fuel, the greater the energy released. And there's her data. In front of you, it says the energy released is given by that equation there, which they give to you. Calculate energy released by methanol. And the important thing here is you remember that this mass is of the water that is heated, not of the fuel that is burnt. It's 100 times 4.2 times the temperature change, which is 9 in this case, and that equals 3,780. The next question, do Eva's results support a prediction? Explain your answer. No, they don't, and you don't get a mark for the no, you get a mark for first thing to calculate the energy release for another value. So if you do that, you get a mark. And then because the one with the most atoms, or pentanol, the temperature increase is not the highest. So you've just got to say that the temperature increase relates to the energy value. If you say something like that's the 1st mark. And then the one with the most atoms, which is pentanol, has doesn't have the highest increase. And that's the one with the most atoms. If you put yes for the prediction, you could say the 1st mark is still the same, that the temperature increase relates to the energy released. And then if you said that you thought the last result is an anomaly, then that would get the 2nd mark, but only if you said yes. So the last section then is the physics section, and the first question says, Samuel is investigating the movement and forces in tall buildings or skyscrapers. Skyscrapers have lifts or elevators to transport people up and down. It says, look at the speed time graph for part of the journey of a lift up a skyscraper. The lift travels 30 metres before it reaches its cruising speed at point X. Samuel thinks that the cruising speed is 5 metres per second. Use a calculation to explain if he is correct. Now remember, speed times time equals the distance. So this area underneath the triangle here is going to equal 30. So this means that 30 is going to equal the speed times 6, so that's s there, not 5, times 6, so speed, which is this distance, times 6, divided by 2. So therefore 60 will equal speed, or 6 speeds, so s will equal 60 divided by 6, which equals 10. So actually the answer is 10 metres per second, so therefore Sam is not correct. So you get 2 marks for getting this 10, and then a mark for saying that Sam is not correct. The lift begins to slow down at point y on the graph. Compare the acceleration of point 0 and x with the acceleration between points y and z. So there's a mark for saying that between 0 and x is a longer time than between y and z, which means that between 0 and x it has a lower acceleration between y and z. You could also say that between 0 and x it's acceleration, but between y and z it's deceleration, for a mark as well. When the lift is moving at its cruising speed, work is done by the motor pulling the lift. There are 8 people in the lift. The average weight of each person is 600 newtons. The weight of the lift is 6,000 newtons. Calculate the power needs to move the lift and the 8 people at cruising speed. So remember, the power needed is the force times the speed. So the force here is going to be 6,000 for the weight of the lift, plus 8 times 600 for the weight of the people. So that equals 10,800 newtons, that's the force. Then times that by the cruising speed, which was 10, and that gives you 108,000 watts. Remember, the formula for that was in the front of your booklet. Then calculate the total mass of the lift and the people in it. The value of gravitational field strength is 9.8 newtons per kilogram. So that's the force, 10,800, divided by 9.8, and 2 significant figures, that's 1,100 kilograms. But this equals 1102.0408. Remember, the first significant figure is the first non-zero number, which is this 1. Second significant figure is the second non-zero number, which is this 1. Although any number after that first non-zero number is a significant figure, so this 0 is also a significant figure if you were to count it. So that is it to 2 significant figures. Suzy is a skydiver. Look at the graph. It shows her speed after she has jumped from an aeroplane. There are 4 sections of the graph, level A, B, C and D. Write about the forces acting on Suzy during her descent and explain the different speeds she travels at. So you could talk about each section in turn, but there's 4 marks overall, but there's lots of different points you could make. So in A, you could say that the acceleration is because weight is greater than drag, or the acceleration reduces because drag increases. That's A. Then B, the terminal speed is there because the weight equals the drag, or the forces are equal, or the forces are opposite or balanced. Then C, you could say that deceleration as drag increases, or you could say as deceleration as drag is now greater than the weight. And then D, you could say that drag equals weight again, or the forces are equal and opposite or balanced. So you've got to talk about each section in turn and then say one of those things for each section. So always talk about drag and weight and the difference between them. So if we're accelerating like in A, the weight is greater than drag. If you're at a terminal speed like in B and D, the weight equals the drag. And if you're decelerating like in C, then the drag has increased and therefore it's greater than the weight. Suzy practices her landings by jumping from a low platform. She is attached to straps that act like a parachute, and there's what happens. So Suzy standing still on the platform, Suzy is exactly halfway down, Suzy on the ground. And it says, look at the statements about Susan's energy she does have parachute for. Put a tick in the box beside any correct statement and a cross inside any incorrect statement. The first has been done for you. So the first one, between A and B, Suzy gains both gravitational energy and kinetic energy. Well, that's incorrect. She's only gaining kinetic energy. And then between A and B, Suzy gains only kinetic energy. That is correct. At B, her kinetic energy exactly half her GPE. At A, that is incorrect. Before touching ground, C, Suzy has a maximum kinetic energy. That is correct. On the ground at C, Suzy has 0 kinetic energy. That is correct. And at the ground at C, Suzy has a maximum GPE. That is incorrect. So if you got all 6 of those right, that's 3 marks. If you've got 4 or 5, that's 2 marks. 2 or 3, that's 1 mark. And then less than 2, that's no marks. Then last question, Rufus is driving his car to work. In the first part of his journey, he drives at a speed of 10 meters per second on a dry road. In the second part of the journey, he drives at a speed of 20 meters per second and it starts to rain. Expand the high speed in the road affects his thinking distance and braking distance. So there's 3 marks here. So firstly, you can say that his thinking and braking distance increase with more speed. For a second mark, you could say that his thinking distance doubles as his speed doubles. For the third mark, you could say his braking distance quadruples as his speed doubles. And then another mark, you'd say the braking distance increases due to reduced friction or grip. So, talking about his speed, as his speed increases, both his thinking and braking distances increase. This is doubled, therefore his thinking distance doubles. This is doubled, therefore his braking distance quadruples. And the braking distance increases because of reduced friction or grip. So any 3 of those 4 points will get you those 3 marks. Now remember, before you leave, to get the next paper, which is due in after Easter, from the teacher, and make sure you pick up the 6 mark answers as well.